She runs a dirty laundromat and thinks she can handle a $30 million estate? My father's booming voice echoed through the courtroom, drawing a smug chuckle from the judge. My brother smirked from the front row, adjusting his designer suit as if he'd already won. My dad's expensive corporate lawyer shook his head, throwing a patronizing glance toward my simple clothes. They thought they were dealing with a broke woman who washed clothes for a living. They thought they had successfully backed me into a corner to strip away my late mother's legacy. But as the judge ordered the final financial disclosure documents to be unsealed, my dad confidently opened my background folder. Within seconds, the smug grin wiped completely off his face. His skin turned an asymmetric, deathly pale. He stared at the highly decorated military uniform and the federal seizure stamps inside, whispering, "Oh my God. She's..." Before his knees buckled, and he collapsed heavily onto the courtroom floor. My name is Clara Thompson. I am 34 years old, and if you walked into the corner of 5th and Elm on any given Tuesday, you would find me loading industrial washing machines, folding crisp white sheets, and wiping down counters. To the neighborhood, I was just the quiet woman who ran the local laundromat, a peaceful sanctuary filled with the steady rhythmic hum of spinning dryers and the clean scent of laundry detergent. But to my family, I was an absolute embarrassment. My father, Richard Vance, is a billionaire corporate mogul who built an empire on ruthless deals, while my younger brother, Leo, is his arrogant, fiercely entitled second-in-command. For over a decade, they had completely cut me off, treating me as the ultimate family failure because I chose to walk away from their corrupt corporate world to live a quiet life. They assumed I was broke, struggling, and desperate, entirely unaware of what I had actually been doing during my many years away from home. The deceptive calm of my simple life shattered completely when my beloved mother passed away. Her death exposed a massive legal battlefield. My father and brother immediately moved to seize her entire estate, but they hit an unexpected wall. My mother had secretly established a hidden, ironclad $30 million trust fund, and she had explicitly left every single dime of it to me. My father was absolutely furious, determined to steal it back to fuel his empire. They thought stripping me of her legacy would be effortless, but they had no idea who I really was. The morning my father and brother decided to ambush me, the laundromat was unusually quiet. The bell above the glass door chimed violently as Richard Vance strode in, his expensive Italian leather shoes clicking loudly against the linoleum tile. Leo followed closely behind, a condescending smirk plastered across his face, accompanied by two high-priced corporate attorneys carrying sleek leather briefcases. Richard didn't bother greeting me. Instead, he threw a thick manila folder onto the front counter, right on top of a stack of freshly folded towels. Inside was a legal settlement offering me a meager $50,000 to completely waive all my rights to my mother's $30 million trust. "Sign it, Clara," my father demanded, his voice dripping with absolute disdain as his eyes swept over the hum of the washing machines. "A girl who spends her days scrubbing dirt out of other people's clothes has no business handling millions. You'd lose it all in a week." Leo chuckled, running a manicured finger over a nearby dryer, making a show of checking for dust. "Look at this place, Clara. It's pathetic. Take the 50 grand, buy yourself some better soap, and leave the real money to the people who actually know how to run an empire." They genuinely believed their overwhelming arrogance and financial power would terrify me into submission. They expected tears, begging, or a desperate signature. Instead, I calmly picked up the document, looked them both in the eyes, and slowly tore the paperwork right down the middle. I tossed the pieces into the trash bin behind the counter and smiled. Richard's face flushed a deep, angry red. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a harsh, icy whisper. "You'll regret this, Clara. We are going to take you to court. We will humiliate you in front of the entire city, and I will personally ensure you leave that courtroom with absolutely nothing." After the bell above the door chimed and the heavy glass entrance swung shut behind my father and brother, the heavy silence of the laundromat returned. But I didn't break down, and I didn't panic. Instead, I walked to the back supply room, locked the door, and opened a secure, encrypted laptop hidden beneath a false bottom in a crate of industrial detergent. For the past year, this humble laundromat had been my sanctuary, a deliberate, quiet transition project after a grueling, high-intensity career my family knew absolutely nothing about. They looked at the steam and the soap suds and saw a dead end. They had no idea it was the perfect cover to observe their movements without ever raising suspicion. I initiated a secure connection and dialed a private number. Within 2 seconds, a highly specialized legal and analytical team answered the line. They didn't call me a laundry girl. They addressed me by my true rank, ready to deploy a network of resources that Richard Vance's corporate lawyers couldn't even begin to comprehend. We spent the next 3 hours meticulously cross-referencing my mother's original trust documents with a mountain of financial data I had quietly gathered over the past several months. Before we step into that intense courtroom and watch their smug smiles completely vanish, I want to take a quick moment to speak directly to all of you. Comment below right now with the city or country you are watching this video from. I want to see exactly how far this story of justice and truth has reached across the world, and see who stands with me. With the strategy finalized, I compiled a comprehensive, unredacted federal dossier containing ironclad proof of my background and their financial misdeeds. I drove downtown and submitted the paperwork directly to the court clerk under an emergency federal seal. This strategic move guaranteed that my father's expensive legal team wouldn't get a single glimpse of the contents until the exact moment the judge requested the official evidence. The invisible trap was set, and they were walking right into it. The day of the official hearing arrived, and the marble hallways of the downtown courthouse felt cold and imposing. Richard Vance made sure to turn our family dispute into a public spectacle, arriving with flashing media cameras, a small army of reporters, and 5 high-priced corporate attorneys flanking him like a royal guard. When I walked into the courtroom wearing a simple, unassuming dark blazer and trousers, Leo openly laughed, leaning over to his lawyer to whisper something that made them both smirk. They truly believed they were about to stage a public execution of my character and permanently strip away my mother's legacy. As soon as the judge called the session to order, my father's lead attorney stood up, buttoned his designer suit jacket, and launched into a ruthless, systematic character assassination. His voice boomed through the courtroom microphone, dripping with calculated professional condescension. "Your Honor," the lawyer stated, gesturing dismissively toward my side of the table. "The petitioner is a simple, unskilled laborer. She operates a neighborhood laundromat. She spends her weeks handling dirty laundry and managing small cash registers. To hand over a highly complex $30 million corporate portfolio to someone with zero business acumen would be an absolute tragedy. She completely lacks the cognitive, professional, and financial capacity to manage an estate of this magnitude." The judge, clearly influenced by my father's immense corporate power and social status within the city, nodded along in agreement. He looked down at me over his glasses, a skeptical frown forming on his face. He openly chuckled at the lawyer's harsh description, leaning forward over his bench. "The court has a responsibility to protect the integrity of large estates," the judge declared firmly. He turned his eyes toward my desk, demanding to see my official occupation and background information. "Ms. Thompson, before I make a final ruling, I want to see your actual professional credentials. Let's see if you are truly nothing more than a laundry girl." The courtroom clerk nodded, stepping forward to break the heavy wax seal on the emergency federal folder I had submitted. She placed the unredacted dossier directly onto the judge's bench and handed identical copies to my father's stunned legal team. Richard leaned back in his leather chair, crossing his legs confidently, fully expecting to read an official confirmation of my meager laundromat earnings. But as the judge opened the paperwork, his skeptical expression instantly froze. The smug grin was wiped clean from my father's face as his eyes scanned the very first page. The documents did not show the tax records of a simple laundry girl. Prominently displayed at the top was an official command portrait of me in full military uniform, alongside my active credentials as a highly decorated major and veteran federal auditor for the U.S. Military Intelligence and JAG Corps. For over a decade, my true occupation had been specializing in high-level corporate fraud, asset tracking, and international money laundering recovery. The information delivered a second, devastating blow. The evidence proved that my humble laundromat was a fully authorized, secure federal operations base. For months, I had been using my quiet position to systematically map out and intercept an illegal web of offshore bank accounts. My father and brother had been using their corporate empire to illegally launder millions in dirty money, the exact same corporate accounts they were now trying to use to absorb and hide my mother's $30 million trust fund. They hadn't brought a defenseless woman to court. They had walked right into a trap set by a federal prosecutor. The heavy silence inside the courtroom was absolutely deafening. Richard's lead attorney turned completely pale, his hands shaking so violently that the federal sheet slipped from his fingers and scattered across the defense table. He looked over at my father, his voice a terrified whisper that carried clearly to the judge's bench. "Richard, we have to stop this immediately. Withdraw the motion right now." But it was already far too late. My father wasn't just losing his grip on my mother's $30 million inheritance. He was staring directly into the abyss of his own total destruction. My legal representative stood up next to me, calmly presenting the judge with signed federal asset forfeiture warrants. My background as a JAG Corps auditor meant that every piece of evidence I gathered at the laundromat was fully verified and legally binding. We weren't just defending a trust fund. The federal government was actively seizing my father's entire corporate empire, freezing their bank accounts, and preparing immediate criminal charges for grand larceny, wire fraud, and systemic elder abuse. Realizing that his immense arrogance had led him straight into an inescapable federal trap, the color drained entirely from Richard's face. He gasped desperately for air, clutching his chest as his eyes locked onto mine with a look of pure, horrified realization. He tried to speak, to utter some desperate plea, but his knees suddenly buckled. He collapsed heavily onto the hard courtroom floor. Total chaos erupted as emergency medical services were rushed into the room, while Leo froze in absolute, paralyzed terror beside him. 3 months after that chaotic day in court, the dust had finally settled on the ruins of the Vance Empire. My father survived his medical episode, but he woke up to a reality where his prestige was completely gone. Facing a mountain of undeniable federal evidence, he pleaded guilty to avoid a lengthy trial and was stripped of his corporate titles. Leo, left with no safety net or stolen wealth, was forced to find an entry-level job just to make ends meet. With my mother's $30 million trust fund entirely secure, I established a national foundation dedicated to protecting whistleblowers and victims of corporate financial exploitation. Yet, despite my wealth, I kept the corner laundromat open. It stands as a reminder that true power doesn't lie in expensive suits or empty arrogance, but in humility, hard work, and the quiet pursuit of truth. What would you have done if your own family underestimated you like this? Would you have walked away or stood and fought for what was yours? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to check out the 2 videos on your screen right now for more incredible stories of justice. Thank you for watching.